Rattansi Ridley joining you from the heart of the British capital, from the world's only floating television studio.
And we have another episode jam-packed full of items as we take you around the world from the turmoil of Somalia to the recovery of Sri Lanka.
We also talk about the crisis hitting the Christian world and find out the truth behind accusations that the Pope is trying to poach disaffected priests from the ranks of the Church of England.
And these two are on a mission to prove Britain is turning into a police state. Are they right? It's a serious issue, but they use humour as their weapon.
So take your seats as Britain's only floating TV studio prepares to set sail on another journey of discovery. Somalia's transitional government is never far from the news, and sometimes it's hard to keep up with the latest developments.
But today's first guest will help us cut through the fog of war, bring us the truth about Somali pirates, and tell us a little more about the rebels and which factions they represent. Welcome to Abbas Gassem, the editor and founder of InsideSomalia.org. All the Western media is focused on, at the moment, on this massive push in Afghanistan, but there's quite a lot of activity in Somalia at the moment as well.
Yes, the government is basically trying to push the rebels out of the capital city, and the rebels themselves are building up to confront that attack. The government controls a small strip of the capital city, Mogadishu, and the civilians are really taking the brunt of the mortar fire and this conflict in Mogadishu.
As Yvonne was saying, I mean, we're hearing all about how Al-Qaeda is the reason for the big push in Afghanistan, but there are other countries, not Afghanistan, that are involved. Would you say a little bit more?
Yes, unfortunately Somalia doesn't get its share of the media and the interest because of the fatigue and the conflicts going on for nearly 2 decades. And if you look at any stats, the humanitarian crisis in Somalia is mind-boggling, with 1.3 million internally displaced people and 600,000 refugees out of the country.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge humanitarian disaster unfolding in Somalia, but if you stop the man in the streets, all he'll talk about is Somalia, oh yes, the pirates. What is the reality of the pirates? Are they villains or Robin Hood hero-type characters?
Well, it depends if that man is in the streets in London or streets in Puntland or other areas where the rebels have a stronghold, the pirates, sorry. In the case of Somalia, they are the heroes because they generate an economy. All that amount of millions of dollars paid to them somehow find its way through the local markets and businesses and so forth. So it does make a difference, and when you don't have any kind of income, anyone who gives you some money through the trickle-down effect is your hero.
And I understand they have an ecological impact.
Yes, in Somalia, for example, we have a large amount of foreign sea trawlers from China, all the way from Spain and France coming in to catch the tuna. And obviously now with the pirates, they're staying away from, and this actually led to kind of, local fishermen benefiting and being able to catch their own fish. But you don't get that from the international media. The only thing you get is the impact on the merchant trade and global shipping.
So you're telling us then that the Somali pirates are really eco-warriors?
Well, that's laws of unintended consequences. So they've basically initially started as local fishermen who were pushed by the large sea trawlers, and somehow they captured a couple of these ships and they got paid ransom money for it, and then they went to a bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's all started with the local fishermen because they couldn't catch and make their own daily lives on the coast of Somalia.
If Somalia is so key to certainly George W. Bush's war on terror, why is it, do you think, people will have to rely on InsideSomalia.org? You keep talking about the media. Why is the media not interested otherwise in covering it?
Well, I mean, really the Western media has a very short time span. I mean, if you're not on the 6 o'clock news, if you're not Haiti, if you're not Afghanistan, if you're not on the British elections.
Well, they're British hostages, of course, at the moment.
Yes, so in moments like that, well, Paul and Chandler and Rachel were kidnapped, you do get that spike of interest. But then the moment they're either freed or whatever happens, it's business as usual, they move on. And unfortunately, the issues and the problems in Somalia is much more long-term, and it's not only a 6
What about US interference now? I mean, obviously they were interfering big time under the Bush administration. How would you characterize US interference, I think is the only word?
Well, the US has explicitly shown their support for the transitional federal government, and they are really, without the US supporting them, the transitional federal government will fall. They only control a small strip of land, and they have the support of the African Union troops, and they're financed by, obviously the Western donors. And if this doesn't happen, then...
Mind you, they were supporting the Ethiopians before, and they managed to survive.
Yes, well, again, that was a proxy war, and they did, should I say, the invisible arm of the George Bush policy to Somalia, and now Ethiopia has went back, left Somalia. But the Americans are still there, but they are doing very much not an active role, but kind of behind the scenes they're pulling the strings.
What do you see as the end game, Gassem?
The end game in Somalia is dialogue, in my opinion. The rebels control the southern part of Somalia, 3/4 of it. The government controls only a small strip. The people suffering are not the rebels, they're not the government, but the Somali people. And dialogue and way to make sure that we can get things going is the right way. Obviously, the rebels themselves don't do justice by supporting Al-Qaeda and by talking very harshly in the media about the U.S. Government and U.S. policy, but there has to be a dialogue, and there is a middle ground, and unfortunately I don't see that happening in the near future.
Well, thank you very much for coming in and sharing this with us.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
And moving from one troubled spot to another war zone is our next